Well, I'm gonna be honest. This week's chapter is short. Not short as in like terms of pages, but just in terms of things to really go over. Because this is one of the exciting parts of One Piece. This is a calm before the storm chapter. A chapter that sets up where things could go very poorly for us. But as I've said before, we have a dragon the size of an island on our side. What can we be afraid of anymore? Hello, Internet. I am the hero of Julios once again with another One Piece chapter summary. This week's chapter is chapter 1177, Furious. The chapter art this week is Nico Robin. I'm always happy when there's a Robin one. So it is Robin restoring a flower bed with some moles. The moles dug up the flowers and she's with the moles planting it back in. So I don't know if it was like the moles were sorry for what they did or if they're actually the ones making the flower bed. But whatever the reason, Robin's planting flowers. It's funny because it's the flower fruit. You get the point. So the actual chapter itself starts off with Colin as he is looking upon the giant warriors of Elbaf and the giant warrior pirates, and they're all getting ready to duke it out because, remember, as we learned last chapter, Dory, Broggy, Stanson, and Harden, along with Zoro, they don't have to hold back because a lethal blow is all it takes to save our friends. So, we warriors who always, we always fight and we always, kill our enemies, but we've never had to actually test our mettle against each other. So the ability to prove once and for all who's the strongest, this is going to be fun. So unfortunately for Colin, all the children are being scooped up and taken somewhere safe because obviously there's going to be a ton of carnage, but you can see the joy on his face as this stand down begins. Meanwhile, Kashi is actually all alone while Chopper and Gaban are with him, but Gaban is injured, Chopper's tending to him. So Kashi's stuck in a 2v1 with these two other giants staring him down. We don't get a lot of time for this, as Kashi just can't bring himself to fight them. There are some of us who don't like the idea of fighting our friends. And Kashi also doesn't know that defeating them is how you save them. So in his eyes, this is still a dire situation. But we don't have time to talk about that. We actually go right back to the action as we see Broggy standing down against one of his friends, and he tells him, listen, I know you're demonly possessed. I know you're like twice your height right now, and I'm going to be honest, I need to get something off my chest, buddy. Every time you ask to take a bite of food, you always eat half of it, and I have been wanting to do this for a long time. As Broggy slashes this guy in half, letting the fuel of 100 half-eaten lunches get to him. As this guy being slashed through, he's just like, I'm sorry, Captain. And assumedly, he is changed back to himself. We then cut to Stanson taking out someone with his hammer, Harden punching through a guy. Dory actually goes as far as to use the Spear of Elbaf on one of them. Like, this is their most powerful technique as far as I know, and they're just blasting their own guys with it. Oda goes particularly brutal with Zoro. I'm not going to show the panel, read the chapter, but Zoro actually, dices a giant's head, in multiple ways as he slashes through them with an attack called, it's like Red Ogre Killing Blow or something. We knew Zoro could end lives like a madman, but to this kind of brutality, I think Oda's using Dami Reversi as an excuse to show, yes, these characters are super powerful. Yes, they could do this kind of damage. They choose not to. It actually reminds me, there was a question corner a while back where somebody actually asked Oda, hey, if Buggy splits apart, because, he's been diced, he's been cut by the chop fruit, how come blood doesn't show between all his different parts? And Oda's response to this was, what kind of manga do you want me to draw? And that's an interesting look into One Piece as a whole. I don't know if any of you have watched the live action, but I'm going to just say spoilers for live action One Piece in general. But it gets kind of bloody. We actually see people getting slashed up. We see a guy get cut in half. We see when Miss All Sunday shows up and uses her devil fruit power, she takes out some people brutally. And it's that kind of realistic blood and pain that One Piece doesn't really do. We get, like, you know, when she does her, you know, Dos Fleur, you know, clutch, and she, like, breaks Spandam's spine and things like that. We've seen brutality. But it seems in these latest chapters, Oda's getting a little heavier. And I think that might be because he knows his audience is getting older, and he knows his audience can handle it. At the end of the day, One Piece is still designed for young boys, but there's a lot of dark, bloody subtext across all of One Piece. You know, from what goes on in Dressrosa to what happens in Marie-Joie to the implication of even the birth of Bonnie herself. Like, there's a lot of dark things here. And going back to the original question I presented on the question corner, Oda doesn't draw a bloody, gritty, realistic manga because that's not the kind of story he wants to tell. Not really a bloody realism kind of manga. But it is nice to see that this is something that is definitely capable of happening. So, in a abnormal fashion, usually when we jump from thing to thing in One Piece, we start with, you know, this happens, and then we go here, and then we go here, and then we go here, and then maybe we go back to here. What we did this time was we started with the standoff, we went to Kashi, we went back to the fight, and now we go back to Kashi again, as he is trying to defend against these two while protecting Gaban and Chopper, and knowing that it is a 1v2, Gaban and Chopper decide to step in as best they can, and they turn it into a 3v2 as Chopper goes monster point, Gaban picks up his axe as best he can, and they start getting at it. Well, Chopper, trying to stop this big bully, he actually slaps one of the giants with his monster point fist. This is the same monster point attack that he slammed Queen with. And for a brief moment, we see this giant recoil backwards, and a little demon shadow sort of peels off of him. And as he falls over onto the ground, that's when the Dami Reversi happens, and he goes back to normal. So I don't think Chopper hit the guy with enough force to, like, crack the neck or something. I think Chopper was literally just trying to slap the guy. It is possible that what's happening here is when Imu does his Dami Reversi and he takes you and he flips you and he, you know, puts you in the underworld for a moment and then flips you back with your big demon form. What could be happening is whatever Eam's devil fruit is, because again, no explanation right now. I'm still leaning towards demon fruit with these kind of things. But maybe he flips you to the underworld. A demon literally latches itself on you, and then when you flip back, the demon's in control. That being said, if you, as the great Bob Ross once said, beat the devil out of it, you free them. And then the reversal happens. Or maybe you have to take the person, hit them, and when they hit the ground, it's like flipping the tile in the game, and then that's how they get flipped. It hasn't been explicitly stated yet, but there seems to be more than just brutal ending. You can actually just slap them, and they'll come back. Either that or Chopper's devil fruit has some kind of extra power that we don't know about. I'm really hoping it's not. I'm hoping that maybe we could just leave the human fruit as the human fruit. It doesn't need to be a mythical zone. But that's all we get on that fight, as we now cut to Killingham, as he is yelling at the Straw Hat crew. He's telling them how weak they are and how pathetic they are. And then we zoom out and we see Jinbei is just holding him by the head. Literally. As in Killingham is just ahead right now. It's actually kind of funny because Killingham's like, could you unhand me, fishman? You're disgusting. Because remember, they don't like fishmen. They think they're fish, blah, blah, blah. It's all the... Insert racism here. But Killingham, I think it's actually the most fitting that Jinbei is the one holding him because he is the most racist towards Jinbei himself. But Jinbei's like, you're not really in a great position to make demands here. And he's like, yeah, well, you're all beneath me and I will defeat you and yada, yada, yada. So Frankie, ignoring this guy, talks to Sanji and he says, I think we might have gotten too strong. Luffy's an emperor of the sea. This guy barely put up a fight. And Sanji's like, I know, it's actually really insulting to Elbaf that these idiots took over. That these idiots were actually going to get away with this. To which Killingham responds, that's right, keep overlooking us. Which raises my question, where's Sommers? Because Luffy, I get it, Luffy obliterated him. But where's Sommers? I'm starting to worry that this is not like Herald, and Sommers is going to show up, and he's going to ruin my day, because that's just what he does, is he just ruins people's day. But as the crew is talking about their victory over Killingham, they actually decide, I think what they're going to do is they're going to put him in a box, because maybe he can't regenerate outside of his area of effect. So, like, for example, if he's just ahead in a box, there might not be enough room for him to regenerate, so he just can't. This could be like a buggy scenario where he needs a specific amount of room in order to do things, and if he can't, like, or if his limb is in a box, then he can't bring that limb back. Because we don't know if, like, if you chop off the arm of a God's Knight, does the arm just dissipate? Or can it be reattached? Or can you willingly dissipate it and then grow a new one? Like, how does that work? However, we don't really have a lot of time to talk about that. Nami is currently restoring Zeus, letting him know that there's fire all over the place, and we need to do something about that. So just, I'm going to keep feeding you black balls, you're going to keep raining, and Zeus is like, you got it, Nami. Thanks again for saving me, guys. And that's when a dragon shows up. As this giant Loki, with Luffy, of course, show up to the rest of the crew. And Luffy's like, hey, guys, this is my new friend. As Sanji, Jinbei, Frankie, they're all like, you're friends with a dragon now? And Sanji's like, that's Loki? And yeah, this is great. This is great. Once again, giant island-sized dragon on our side. What could we possibly be afraid of? Well, I'll tell you what we could possibly be afraid of. Nami. Nami is unfazed by world-ending dragon. She actually starts scolding Luffy. She says, Luffy, you idiot, once again, we leave you alone for 10 seconds and you befriend the biggest, literally, weirdo on the island, and you, dragon guy, with the big fires everywhere, you're the one causing most of this problem now. There's no Elbaf to save if you destroy Elbaf. And it just cuts to Luffy, and he's sitting there, and Ragnar comes up next to him, the squirrel, and he just kind of pats him on the back. It's like they're there. Luffy looks at Loki, and Luffy hops off Loki and starts yelling at him. He says, Loki, look what you've done. Nami's yelling at me because of you. And Loki looks at Luffy and he said, how dare you? I am destroying the enemies of Elbaf. You're the reason I got scolded. And he blasts Luffy with a breath of lightning. I will say that again. He blasts Luffy with a breath of lightning. So after he's done blasting, him and Luffy stand there for a moment, and Luffy's just like, oh, that's right, you just breathe lightning. There's really not a reason to be afraid of you, huh? And Loki's like, why didn't that work? And Luffy's like, you're lucky it didn't work, because if you did, I would have beat you up and down this island. So,
you clearly didn't read 500 chapters ago.
Yeah, that's true. If I had a nickel for every time a powerful character tried to use lightning to destroy Luffy, only to realize that he was immune to it, I would now have 3 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it is wild that it's happened 3 times now. So, after the scolding, after the comedy, after all of this, Luffy gets a feeling. He gets, senses with his observation hockey and starts heading in that direction, only to find Brook and Usopp. They have been 2v1ing against the Gunko-controlled Emu. Or Emu-controlled Gunko, sorry. And, I mean, I'm going to guess Emu's just toying with them. He probably doesn't really care that he's fighting them, but they're holding out pretty nicely. Brook tells Usopp, though, you have to leave. Like, you got to get out of here. I came to challenge her based on my own selfish reasons. It's a full backstory thing. We're going to get a huge flashback, probably in about 5 or 6 chapters from now. It doesn't, depends. Depends on breaks as well. But Usopp, this is my fight. And Usopp says, no, it is not, Brook. First of all, my crewmate, which is you, has been injured by this individual. I'm not letting that slide. Second, this coward, this absolute failure, has decided to use the most underhanded, backward scheme in order to defeat the mighty warriors of Elbaf. If you're going to take over an island of proud warriors, do it like a proud warrior. And Emu's just like, I won't, actually. In fact, doing any work is beneath Mu. I'm honestly just here because I feel like it. To which Usopp tries to hit him with the bomb grass, and Emu, for lack of a better word, Emu just kind of beats up the two of them for a moment. And as Usopp and Brook are laying on the ground, Emu standing over them menacingly, floating actually, with the wings and stuff, floating over them menacingly. Suddenly, there's a giant dragon again. It's just the way Loki just shows up. He is I want to say at least 500 feet tall. Maybe even 1,000. How does he just keep sneaking up on people? Why does he just... The Oda doesn't show Loki, like, landing or moving. Loki just appears. So as Loki just appears, Luffy hops off him. He sees Usopp and Brook in the condition they're in. They're both knocked out at this point, I think. And we actually see Luffy, in Gear 5th, angry. Now, there was a going worry among the fandom that because of the nature of Gear 5th, how Luffy's always laughing, how he's Joy Boy, he's Nika, he is always smiling, that we were never going to see Luffy take a fight seriously ever again. Rest assured, this is no longer a problem. Eam has officially ticked this boy off. So Eam and Luffy and Loki are all staring each other down as the two of them prepare to fight against this all-powerful foe. Eam looks at them and just says, Needauger, Nika. You both may choose to obey, or you both may choose to die. Does not matter to Mu. But this battle will divide the world. And that's where the chapter comes to an end. So, I mean, if Eam is not afraid of giant dragon Loki, maybe there is still something to be afraid of. But let me know in the comments below. Do you think this is going to be a huge decisive battle like Emu thinks it is? Or do you think he is going to retreat, head back to Mary Joie, and we'll deal with that problem another day? But either way, it looks like the final battle of Elbaf is upon us. So thank you for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video. This is the Hero of Julios, Xing out.